Hello. Good to see you. Kate is here today helping out, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, Kate. Things are moving on well for Jesse in Massachusetts with the funeral ceremony, so he sends his love. If you want to look at people on the next page, please do.
Elena, you have a hand up. Is that accident or oh, maybe it's an accident. Okay.
Okay. Well, always good to jump right in. So let's get into our postures that work best for us for the formal practice of sitting, lying, kneeling. Sometimes it's really helpful to just shift into the intention to allow or understand our experience rather than that knee-jerk reaction of judgment to what's appearing. And there's a great power to that intention when we mean it. And the intention to care about, at least be tender, sometimes kind with whatever is appearing. Again, sometimes it's just that shift into deeply meaning it. And it doesn't have to be with a heavy hand or trying to control. In fact, we let it go once we make it. Just see what happens. And finding the stillness and quiet through the awareness of hearing right now. Just knowing we're hearing. And if you can, receiving textures and vibration of the silence and sound. And of course, the thoughts about the sounds will appear at times. And really important. We don't have to struggle or get rid of thinking. Just notice thinking like we notice hearing. And discern or distinguish between the vibrations and textures just as they're happening. Sometimes it will feel like we go from receiving to no inside, no outside. Just sound coming and going, just as it is. And finding that peace, what's appearing, of letting things be just as they are, the non-doing awareness. And from that open awareness shifting to our hand, noticing the vibration and texture of the physical sensation. It's just like the sound. Get that sense of no inside, no outside, just textures, vibration, coming and going, just as they are. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. With the movement of the breath at your abdomen. If there's any trying too hard or forcing any attention, it can be helpful to put your hand on your abdomen, just like experiencing a wave or a swell coming and going in the ocean. Again, that sense of not me or yours or ours. It's just air element, movement, aliveness, changing textures and vibration. If we can, receiving them just as they're happening and disappearing as best we can. So we have the word breath, abdomen. The words are not the experience. This great exploration or adventure into the unknown, moment by moment. Never again this moment. Including that range of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling tone. And just knowing if happiness or fear, sadness appear. It's just like the word breath or sound. They're just words to help us be with whatever physical sensations are happening or thoughts. Judgments, expectations, agendas, memories, planning, doubt, disliking, liking. All for the first time and then disappears. Just seeing if you can stay connected with that sense of exploration and then anchoring if we need to. Just very simply being with the swell of breath or sound, coming to safe harbor when we need to. with great tenderness, care, time, kindness. And acceptance. I wanted to, can you hear me okay? Yeah. I wanted to explore kama or karma a little bit, inspired by last week's Q&A. One of the important aspects of when we kind of sit down to do a formal meditation, whether it's before sitting, walking, or is to just set an intention. I often use my hands to show a kinesthetic how that might feel, but it's really just, it's like shifting. It's just shifting deeper inside and getting in touch with what we might really be doing, what our motivation really is, because that has great power. And so when you look at the word motivation or the word karma, uh, you have to look at action as it's motivated by aversion or fear, or an action that's motivated out of attachment, or an action that's motivated out of delusion or confusion. Just as one looks at an action motivated out of kindness, or an action motivated out of equanimity, or motivated out of patience. Of course, these, I could go on and that, but I think you get the idea, that there's kind of knee-jerk conditioned responses, and then there are pauses and well-considered action out of wisdom and love. So when we use the word karma, or when you hear it's used karma, it's a potential ripening result of action. So it's so another way to put this, which I think is very interesting, is that when we pay attention to our moment-to-moment experience in the present moment, that changing moment-to-moment experience, all of that is the ripening of karma, moment by moment. And that's really all you need to know on one level, is that I like to call the practice or being incarnated and living one's life. It's like we're living out karma, living out karma. There's no way around it. It's just, that's how it is, whether we know it or not, right? We're living out karma, and that's the result of past motivations, motivated by aversion or motivated by love, right? It's like, and they could be motivated, and they could. What's very important to remember, and why the Buddha called karma, trying to understand it in the present moment, what's happening, is that it's imponderable, because this could be coming from 300,000 years ago, a lifetime when we were a frog, right? Like the level to which, we've all been somebody's mother, father, daughter, son, cousin, but like from our Deva worlds that we've been in, or from the human worlds, or the fish worlds, or like the level of imponderable is the reason why the Buddha called it imponderable, right? But you can live it out well. And the idea is that you're attempting to not create more karma. So one level of not creating more karma, of course, is described as, but I find the wording a little tricky, but when there's an action motivated by, say, anger, versus pausing and an action motivated by kindness, that's partly what freedom of choice is giving us. Like the Vipassana practice, the liberating aspect of it is that we have the freedom of choice, so that we're not just, it's like a ping pong game of aversion to aversion. Somebody says something motivated by aversion, and then we respond with aversion, right? It's like this ricochet, echoing ricochets of just knee-jerk reactions, right? But one of the things that's interesting about this, which is one has to bring up as a teacher, is that there can be wholesome karma ripening and unwholesome karma. There can be unwholesome karma ripening from an action, again, motivated by aversion, or wholesome karma motivated when we're motivated by kindness. But a fully enlightened being creates no more karma. There's no more unwholesome karma or no more wholesome karma, because one is free of identification completely. And for my favorite description of this is, if we're living out karma and being with our sixth sense door moment by moment experience, when we're not identified. And so when there is peace with a sound, or peace with a thought, or peace with an emotion, or peace with a physical sensation, a fully enlightened being is just having peace with each moment as it's unfolding, and therefore no more karma is created. So it's described as leaving no trace. There's no trace. There's no trace of identification, whether it's positive or negative. That's sort of the important aspect of the unfolding of karma and understanding it. I think that when we're born into this world, especially when we're born in our cases in the human world, whatever is appearing at any of the six sense doors is information. And if we understand that we're here to learn, and that we're learn to discern the information of thought, or information of emotion, or discern it and learn. Discern it and learn. Discern it and learn. Be willing to make mistakes, that because we're learning, and give other people, cut them slack, because we are not born fully enlightened, or we wouldn't be here. So where are you? I'm starting with a quotation from Sri Nisargadatta. It's a question and answer. It's a very simple question and answer paragraph. It isn't complicated. The question is to Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj in the book I Am That. I am familiar, the general sense of what you say. I do not crave for more knowledge. All I want is peace. The Maharaj answers, you can have for the asking all the peace you want. Question, I am asking. And he says, you must ask with an undivided heart and live an integrated life. Question, how? Detach yourself from all that makes your mind restless. Renounce all disturbance. Peace. You want peace, deserve it. Question, surely everybody deserves peace. And he said, those only deserve it who don't disturb it. This is really simple, but incredible. Because I find the word deserve and karma so complex and so complicated. But to say those only deserve peace who don't disturb it is kind of brilliant. So question, in what way do I disturb the peace? And he says, by being a slave to your desires and your fears. Question, even when they are justified, he answers, emotional reactions born of ignorance or inadvertence are never justified. Seek a clear mind and a clean heart. All you need is to keep quietly alert, inquiring into the real nature of yourself. This is the only way to peace. I think in these times, something like this, just it's very simple, but to really look at when we are disturbing the peace. Yeah. With our own inadvertence. Um, I hope you're smiling. He kind of knocks it out. Where are we? I wanna, Sri Nisargadatta called karma the divine medicine. Just think if you were like with every moment of your experience that it's like the divine medicine. There's a teacher that also very much got to the point, Ruth Dennison, and one time she described karma as don't get away with anything, darling. You don't get away with anything, darling. And I think in my early days in this Buddhist practice, or even before, really in the mid 60s, when all the kind of teachings from the East coming over to the West, and somebody would see somebody having a hard time and they'd be like, oh, they just have bad karma, you know, and it would just upset me so deeply. So flippant, so far away from imponderable. Yeah, so wanting it to be that simple. This is from Tolkien, from the really the whole process of the Lord of the Rings, but this is from the Fellowship of the Ring. I hope most of you are at least a little bit acquainted with it. Frodo is having to face like nightmare after nightmare of suffering of trying to save the world. Like horrible. And he hasn't even really, he can see uh, the nightmare coming. And so he got this ring from Bilbo. And there's a character called Gollum who is causing so much dukkha, like so much suffering. He's really, really looking evil and awful. And so Frodo says to Gandalf, the wise wizard, he says, it's a pity Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance. Really, take this in. This is unbelievable. It's a pity Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance. And Gandalf says, pity. It's a pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death. Some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. Even the wise cannot see all ends. My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play for good or evil before this is over. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. So yeah, so Frodo takes this in, and then he says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And Gandalf says, so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for us to decide. This is important for all of us. So do all who live to see such times. That's where we are. But that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that's given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides that of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you were also meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought. So what are we doing with the time we have in these times? So one aspect of our deeper spiritual practice is deepening our connection with anicca, dukkha, anatta, right? Valuing it more and more, understanding it on deeper and deeper levels, these three characteristics of existence that any being, no matter what realm, faces, right? So that sense of transience, the impermanence of life, the dukkha, the instability, the unreliability, the uncertainty because of impermanence. And then anatta knows solid, permanent core self in any being that takes birth. And I just wanted to emphasize the anicca aspect for our times because I feel that because we're in early autumn, when autumn can still seem so benign and so comforting, like you see this beautiful leaf falling, or you see the dahlias still blooming, or winter hasn't hit. So, like, we all have seasons of life, and nature has its seasons. But there is a way that we can interpret anicca softly. Like, we want it to be benign. We want it to be almost comforting. Yeah, and that's okay, right? We can see that there is that way in which it makes beauty possible. And there's a sense of rhythm to life and seasons, not rupture. But it's also important to know that we can live in times where um, we can have a harder interpretation of anicca. And so there's that sense of um, military force and war and sudden ruin and devastation and floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, um, harsh winters, really harsh winters, and so um, I think it makes times when things aren't just like that soft interpretation of anicca much more workable to get that that's part of how things are on the planet, even without humans. we don't even have to add humans into it. Just look at geological time. Um, and I think that there's a way in which some of Van Gogh's paintings are really include this. Like you can see that, for example, he loves sunflowers. He loved the south of France for the colors of life, particularly his yellows, right? And um, I think he really cared about the cycle of life and the its transience. And he wrote to his sister once about his one of his sunflower paintings. No, not one of his sunflower paintings. All of his sunflower paintings. He said his sunflower paintings were a cry of anguish while symbolizing gratitude in the rustic sunflower. And take a look at his paintings of sunflowers again. You'll see so much in them. It's not just all the soft interpretation of anicca and beauty, but you see it all in there. You see that life and death are all there, and the tragedy, the comedy, the beauty are all there. And to see again, to have him express it go from anguish to gratitude. Boy, and can we? So I think often if you took away almost all the religions and all the philosophies and just you get that the human world has the 8 worldly conditions and the 4 pairs. So that the Buddha taught that no matter who we are, no matter what being we are, we face pleasure, pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. And we look at like even when we were kids or teenagers, how we were like trying to deal with the pain in the world and the suffering in the world. How do you make sense of it? And there's so much scapegoating that goes on in the adult world. There's so much blaming. Um, and children learn it. It's like to be able to get that what the Buddha taught was that if we experience that overwhelm and the helplessness in the face of suffering, we can actually, it's like shifting from anguish to gratitude. You shift from any kind of anger, scapegoating, fear to what? Compassion. So to have compassion for us all living out karma, because we know everyone will face gain, loss, pleasure, pain, right, fame, disrepute, praise. It's like, it's just a given, no matter who we are, good karma, bad karma. It's just the way things are. Where is that? I had so many different kinds of jobs in my life, and I think they do build character. I don't know always like if one needs as many different kinds of jobs as I had, but I kind of pioneered a program for environmental education when I worked for Massachusetts Audubon for 2 summers, and then Jesse actually was in one of those programs that I created. Isn't that fun? In Western Mass, and those that kind of pioneering got me a job, um, an environmental education job in the city of Westfield, Massachusetts. And so every week, a new 5th grade class would get out of the bus on a Monday morning and they would leave Friday afternoon for a whole school year. And the person who created this program couldn't get the teachers to sign on the contract for being there. So almost all the teachers in that whole city decided that it was a vacation and didn't show up. And then the place that he rented for the program was a rustic rural Boy Scout camp outside of the city. Decided we couldn't have a mixed gender program in terms of those who were running it. So we couldn't let any of the men that we hired come because I was the director on site. And so we were down to 3 women when this program started. I was running it, and it was rough business. I mean, just wonderful, but so much work. I mean, I drank 12 cups of coffee a day, and if you nobody really wants to imagine me on 12 cups of coffee a day, but there it was, Michele on 12 cups of coffee a day. So anyway, some of the 5th graders had never been away from home overnight. And some of the schools, the kids came from really hard backgrounds. And so because there were no adults present that the kids knew, okay, a whole class, I would learn their names the second they got off the bus. Like I was on such survival levels. I would memorize every kid's name, a whole class within seconds. And I'm trying to come out with like what was difficult, but some semblance of caring discipline um, started to get very challenging for me. And the kids knew I couldn't be really mean. I don't know if I'm wearing a sign that says Michele can't be really mean, but I really can't. And so things were sort of unraveling a little bit. You know, the kids that like would started to do seances at 1 in the morning, and I'd come in and they'd take a flash picture of me. It's like, yeah, you know, and the director in the city had been in the Korean War, and he came out with his little combat boots on and his right fatigues, and he said, "Michele, you really have to tighten this ship down." Um, so I started creating these punishments, so-called punishments, um, so that I hope you can appreciate how awesome this is. But the punishments were, instead of staying in bed, they had to come down into the kitchen with me and wash windows or wash the floors or count silverware, or like I had tons of things that I could have them do. But in a way, like I was up really late and they were up really late, but it totally worked. Like it was amazing. They loved it. They loved washing windows with me. Like they loved washing the floors. They loved counting the silverware. It was like a lot of kids started acting out so that they could have the punishments. But the good news is that it would be a week at a time. But what like, I really got it. It was like they just needed somebody to connect with them kindly. Really, I mean, I have to say, this was some rough, rough kids, and it always worked. In fact, those were the kids that I would cry with them when they left. It would be that deep a connection. And it always reminds me of George Jackson. He wrote Soledad Brother, the prison letters of George Jackson. Was in prison so long. And he said, no one responds to kindness. No one is more sensitive to it than the desperate man. I had a friend who's um, old and going through uh, bankruptcy, and she wrote me that somebody was kind to her at the food bank the other day. And it just made me cry. It's just that's like, that's what we need more of, just like kindness, just kindness, kindness, kindness. Understanding, understanding, understanding. It's not like whatever again human way that religions or philosophies try to come up with making sense of the pain in the world and the suffering of the world. I don't buy it. I don't buy that if you're a woman and you're ugly, that you did something really bad 2 lifetimes ago. That's written in the text. If you're poor, you have really bad karma. That's so awful. That's just a way of trying to control. That's just a way for the wealthy, educated class, no matter whether it's 2,500 years ago or now. But that's so vulgar and distasteful. And it's so not a way to understand karma or karma. And mostly we can see it for ourselves. So, my first 3-month retreat with Theta Upandita was like oil and water mixing. Like it, it didn't mix, right? Like it was like, oh boy. Um, and my first interview with him, he looked at my thing and then he listened to my report and he took his glasses off and he started throwing things at me. And what he said to me was not that important, but I said, well, you're taking away my home. And I started crying. And he said, Vipassana is having no preferences in practice for any instruction, any form. It's like it's having no preferences. Um, then it got very quiet and he reread my interview sheet. And he saw that I had cooked. I had been a cook for Mahasi Sayadaw, right? The late, at that point, late great Mahasi Sayadaw. No, I don't think he had died yet. Yeah. Anyway, he was like considered fully enlightened, the head of the lineage. Um, And it went from like throwing things at me to such a deep respect. Like I still look back at that and just like was so amazed. Like there was this deep quiet. It was quiet for so long. And the way he looked at me was just like he understood that there was such a good karma, that I had the karma to be there when Mahasi came and could cook for him, not even sit with him. I didn't have time. I was cooking. But you see, I didn't try to say, oh, 5,000 years ago, something I did, right? That's not how it is. It's just like I've had unbelievable migraines in my lifetime, just like unbelievable pain. And there were times when I would joke to myself, oh, maybe I was Genghis Khan. Um, and then that didn't seem like enough. Like, and so finally I decided, but was fun for me. It would be so much pain. And I'd think, oh no, I was just a low level guillotine operator. I was just like cutting off people's heads with no feeling whatsoever. Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, like, oh, come on. Who could figure it out? Maybe I was a bullfrog that ate a frog. Who knows? We can kind of get a sense. I know that's like not the same karma as being able to cook for Mahasi, but I get that we all have a mix and that it's a complete waste of time to try to figure it out unless we're having a good time. Unless we're having some uplifting kind of fun with it, but definitely not looking at somebody else and trying to figure it out. There was some discussion last Q&A about deserving what we deserve, and that's why I'm giving this talk about karma, because um, just have to be so careful of that word, yeah, in terms of any kind of interpretation about our present experience. We can just grasp when it's painful, I'm a human on the planet. When it's pleasurable, I'm a human on the planet. When it's neutral, I'm a human on the planet. That's just how it is. As that retreat with Sayadaw Pandita went on, there was a point in time where I found listening to his talks really difficult. When we talked about having aversion to when people would question and answers or listening to talks, and there really wasn't much I could do. There were only 20 people in the hall, but I know how to get my concentration up so high I couldn't hear I couldn't hear the content. I could hear the sound of his voice, but I like worked hard at like this really strong concentration, didn't hear it. And I thought I figured it out, right? It was partly because the languaging was so militaristic, right? Like cutting the heads off the collations. It was just like getting a little bit too much. And I kept retranslating. Oh, Sayadaw meant to say, be gentle. Sayadaw meant to say, be gentle. But I kind of, what was I trying to do? Avoid the aversion. I didn't want to have to face the aversion. So I thought I figured it out. And then I did listen to something he had said at some point, and I came in for an interview, and I said, Sayadaw, I just have a question about something you said in your talk. And he said, if you listen to my talks, you would know the answer to that question. He knew. And it was so awful. Like really, I felt like, oh my God, like I had done it for a long time, not just like 1 or 2 days. I I hadn't listened for a long time, and that he knew, and he just again, it was the same kind of feeling as the time I mentioned before. Long silence. He he had this very sublime smile on his face, um, but it was the way he looked at me both times. It's like, okay, okay. Why am I here at this retreat? What is the motivation? Is it to avoid the aversion? And what came out of that, like, which is really still amazing to me, that teaching about rain, came out of the blood, sweat, and tears of that retreat. And for somebody to change the N from non identification to nourishment is missing the whole point. Because Sayadaw went to great lengths to describe what a moment of mindfulness is. And it was like so important and so detailed, but I knew it had to be translated in a way that we could all hear. So recognition, acceptance, interest, non-identification, all four of those have to be present or it isn't a moment of mindfulness. That's just the fact. It's a fact. And how many people come into this practice and want to hear about non-identification? So do you water it down and not talk about it? I can't do that. It's not meant to make us feel diminished. It's not meant to make us feel like something's wrong with us if there's identification. It's meant to be that we understand what freedom is. One, and as I went along with U Pandita and I could see he trusted me more, he would say, one moment of mindfulness is like a moment of nibbana. It's that free. And we know it. We know when the awareness is free, right? And we know how much we get attached to it. It's just like, of course we want those times when we're equanimous and we're not identified, right? Oh, there's nothing like being afraid and not being identified with it. There's nothing like having a thought and not being identified with it, right? Any of it. It's like, but to leave it out, to leave it out is kind of what is that? And then over time I started to see, well, I can't teach this without the opposite, right? So like if you look at acceptance and if you leave out really emphasizing being okay with resistance, it's going to be hard to make any progress. Why? Because most of the time we're resisting what's happening because our conditioning is not to want pain. Yeah. And that this is what's so critical about this practice is that the the four Brahma Viharas are such a balance. It's like the loving kindness, the karuna, the compassion, the empathetic joy, the equanimity practice, all are there to help support us to bear living out karma. And we can do it. We know we can do it. And I think again in these times, it's like uh, it's such a turbulent little ride we're on. And so to be interested in how we try to defend ourselves, right? To be interested in aversion or fear, to be interested in attachment, right? To be interested in wanting to put our head in the sand, right? Delusion. It's like, it's okay. It's okay. We need this non identification so much to be able to go, ah, ha, ha, ha. It's just aversion. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you do happen to look at the news, I don't think anybody can bear this without like massive infusions of the Brahma Viharas, massive infusions of wisdom. You know, we're so fortunate. If you want to look at good karma, look at that you have this practice. Mm, mm. I saw this article about dis Desertus petrels. They're little birds. Um, we have petrels here, but they're not that type of petrel. Uh, but they use the movements of air to get where they want to go. And so there's a few species of birds that actually um, use hurricanes to get where they want to go. I thought that was really cool because I think it's a metaphor. That's why I'm bringing it up. We can use the times as a metaphor to get more and more liberated, right? So the frigate birds that are called Iwa birds here in Hawaii with the massive wingspans, um, they get space. Like think about when you need space. They when they when they need to get space, they ride the updrafts. I love watching them. It's rare that they're where I live, but I watch them. It's just like finding equanimity. They just go round and round very slowly, up very slowly. They're finding the updraft. We're finding the unconditional acceptance, the loving kindness, right? And then they can go up 2.5 miles. Like that's amazing. And bats surf weather fronts, like which carry them, you know, way far, like a whole continent they can go, a bat on these updrafts, right? And currents. And we can too. I mentioned that a big, huge wild black pig came to the edge of my garage the other day. It was a unusual visitation. I know that because I've lived here almost 16 years and there's never been a wild pig. We have wild goats, we have roosters, I was going to say giraffes because we have so many weird things. We have so many weird things, but never a huge pig. Um, and the mother feral cat had just gotten down from where she hangs out a lot and walked up toward me. Um, And I'll never forget it because when I'm afraid, I look afraid. I mean, she just went totally like the most gracious, dignified, like terror. Like she just stood there. And then I knew I should do something. So eventually I ran up and I clapped really loud, hard, and it ran down the driveway. Um, and I sat on the garage floor and I kind of sat beside her and then she let me pet her a little bit and I could feel her body had just frozen. And then she started melting a bit and she looked at me. It was a look like so amazing. It was like, what was that? It's like, what was that? I've lived 16 years. I've never seen something. And then she got very contemplative. Like, I know I don't know what she's thinking, but it was kind of a look of like really processing um, something so profound. And here in Hawaii, that especially this island, there's a pig god, Kamapua'a. It's a very revered god. And I wondered if she had actually felt the presence of a god. It was that kind of feeling sitting there with her. It was so powerful. And sharing that with her. Um, she she's like living with a sometimes with a bodhisattva. She's never let me pick her up, and yet she's she's on the phone with Steve probably at least an hour and a half a day, mostly more like 3 hours a day, and she loves it. Like at 4:30 my time every afternoon, she gets ready. She gets on her little place where I sit with her and hang out and have her on the phone. And they have such a deep connection. And it's so moving. It's like I'm watching like a miracle. And so you can think, oh, there's some such hard karma happening. And sometimes when I'm sitting there, it's so um, it can be so long because they don't want to get off the phone with each other. And I'm like, I gotta cook dinner, I gotta wash the dishes, I got work to do, but then I think, how how could I not make time for this? And I there's two students from Canada that sent him this beautiful card. Um, and one day I had it leaning against the garage wall because uh, I wanted to read it to Steve, but I hadn't found the right time yet. So it was leaning against the wall, and the cat started to look at it. And then one day the wind blew, and the cat stood on it and was looking at it like for a long time, like a very long time. And then I thought, well, maybe I should make a gallery, and it would be really nice for me and nice for for the cat. And so I have this incredible gallery. I call it the cat gallery, but all these great different, mostly cat. There's a few other beings, um, but then she sometimes will just sit there looking at the art gallery. And I'm sharing this because, well, how could you ever figure out what kind of karma this is? No, really, it's like, right? It's like, what would you even call it? Uh, and that's what I'm trying to get across is um, who can figure out if you trip and fall or you have a person you care about, all of the hours and hours I put in everyday caregiving, like I'm doing everything, right? Not seeing all the finances, all this caregiver, managing the caregiver, the hospital visits, the doctors, it goes on, but it's like it would be incomprehensible to me not to do it. And it's incomprehensible to me to try to figure out the karma. So, like, whatever you're living out, it's like whatever we're living out, it's like, of course, the human being, our species, where we just fall into that wish that we could avoid pain, we could avoid war, whatever, we're living again in times that there's so much unnecessary suffering, right? It's incomprehensible too. Um, and it's happened before. So what are we doing in this lifetime, right? I had a lot of things to say, but I think it's a lot to take in, comma. So I wanted to honor Jane Goodall. Now there's a amazing lady. She just died at 92. And just knowing like what, if you just took her work with chimpanzees and what did she really do? What did she do? She actually did so much of what I'm trying to explain, whether it was the kids at that environmental ed program or, I mean, we did all the science. I'm not saying that we didn't do that. That was like a very rigorous scientific program. But so did she. But she cared about the chimpanzee. She completely changed the way science worked because she made a connection with them emotionally. She made like she, it was not done. It was considered not okay. And then she saw them using twigs and stems and realized they made tools and completely blew apart the idea that humans were that much superior. Yeah. But now, right, she's trying so hard. She's worked so hard. She's she has traveled 300 days a year to talk with people about climate change and biodiversity loss, And so I'm just going to read part of an interview that was done with her last year. She was at Climate Forward. She was going to speak at an event in New York City in September, a little over a year ago. And the interviewer asked her, it was her birthday that day. And the interviewer asked her, when you woke up this morning on your actual, it said 2024, on your actual 90th birthday, what was the first thing you thought? Sorry, I love this so much. And she said that I wish I was somewhere else. And like this woman was just like so shocked that she actually said that. And she said, well, I like being out in nature. And this is my birthday, but it has to be about my mission. I try to get the word out to people to protect the planet, right? To consume less. And so many people look to her for hope. And she said, hope isn't just wishful thinking. She said in this conference, she said, imagine a long dark tunnel with a little star at the end representing hope. There's no good sitting at the mouth of the tunnel and wishing that hope would come to you. We've got to roll up our sleeves. We've got to climb over, crawl under, work around all the obstacles that lie between us and that star. She was so tired. She worked so hard, She really cared. We're so fortunate again. U Pandita would talk about not just about having the good karma of being born at this time on the planet over 2,500 years after the Buddha lived, right? Like there's so much about that in the text and that is beautiful where, just to be around where you would hear something about how to be free, how to actually do it, right? and just like to be alive and to know that she's saying, we're having to work hard at this, right? Like, and I'm saying we have to work hard at our practice right now because it's it's hard times, and we can do it. Like we can do it. We can do it. I'm sure of it. And it takes more time. Takes more time of getting space, like the great frigate birds that go up 2.5 miles. I'm not saying every day we have to go up 2.5 miles, but it's good to be at the Sunday sitting with you. So let's just sit for a minute. Okay. So if you ever want to have a good time, you can wash some windows. May we be from suffering next Sunday. Thank you, Kate.